The Lord be with you.
And with your spirit.
A reading from the Holy Gospel according to Matthew.
Glory to you, O Lord.
Jesus said to his disciples, "You are the salt of the earth. But if salt becomes tasteless, what can make it salty again? It is good for nothing, and can only be thrown out to be trampled underfoot by men. You are the light of the world. A city built on a hilltop cannot be hidden. No one lights a lamp to put it under a tub. They put it on a lampstand where it shines for everyone in the house. In the same way, your light must shine in the sight of men, so that seeing your good works, they may give the praise to your Father in heaven." The Gospel of the Lord.
Praise to you, O Lord Jesus Christ.
This week we're reading from the book of Elijah, and this is an exciting guy. This guy has a real life. So yesterday's reading, he goes to the king and he says, "No rain in the country." And the Lord sends him out by a little stream to have a little time out, because the Lord understands that his life is in danger. The stream dries up. And so we come to today now. The Lord says to him, "Come on. What I want you to do is get up, and I want you to go to Zarephath, a Sidonian town there, and to stay there, because I have prepared for you there." What's important in the prophet Elijah is this, that sometimes God asks us to do difficult things. And when we are asked to do difficult things, sometimes there's a consequence to it. And when there's a consequence to it, God always, always, always provides for us. Now, that is as simple, as straightforward, as direct as I can make it. Because we like to avoid the difficult things that God asks of us. Come on, yes or no? We like to sidestep it, because who wants to do a difficult thing? Who wants to do what is tough? It's much easier just to go with the flow and let the things happen as they happen. But Elijah wasn't that kind of guy. And so when Ahab had brought all of the Baals, the false gods of the region, all of the Baals into his court, because he had married many wives that were worshiping Baals, and when the religion of the Baals became more dominant in Israel than the religion of God, of Yahweh, who had brought them out of Egypt, it is then that God sent Elijah as a prophet to speak to the heart of the people because of the idolatry. And in speaking to the idolatry, he spoke to something at the very core of their life and culture that they did not want to hear. And that's why God said to them, "Well, okay, no rain. That's it." And the no rain brought and got their attention. And having got their attention, they then had to figure out, okay, well, where is this man who's saying no rain? Let me deal with him. But God is protecting him. So when God asks, and he asks you to do what is difficult, you have to know also that he will protect you and he will give you what you need. So Elijah goes to this Sidonian town in Zarephath. And while he is there, he meets this woman who's picking up sticks. And he says to her, "Could you bring me some water?" "No problem." She goes to fetch it. He said, "Well, while you're going for the water, could you bring me back a little bit of bread to eat?" And the woman says, "Sir, as my God lives, I'm telling you that all I have is a little bit of dough and a little bit of oil. And I'm preparing these sticks to bake that. And when it's done, me and my boy are going to die." Now, this woman has come to her very last. Talk about a widow's mite, huh? This is the last of the last of the last. So she has a little ball of dough, a little bit of oil, and this is it. That's all she has. And hear what the prophet asks her. "Okay, Well, go and do as you say, but first bring me some of that to eat. Not eat and leave over some for me. First, bring me some of that to eat. And I'm telling you, the jar of dough will not be spent, the jug of oil will not be spent, not until the rains will come. Now, I ain't sure about you, you know. I ain't sure about you. But you see me? You know they say a bird in the hand, it worth two in the bush. Well, if I was that woman, would salvation history have been the same? If you were that woman, would salvation history have been the same? What the woman actually does is the greatest act of faith that one can have, which is take the very little that she has for herself and her boy to live on and give it to the prophet to eat, to sustain him. And she does it as an act of faith. And in this act of faith, what she does is demonstrate to us what our faith is or is not like. And when we see that, we have to then be stirred and ask ourselves the hard question. Are we really living by faith? Or are we living by convenience? Are we living by what God is asking? Or are we living to save ourselves? Are we doing the things that God is propelling us to do? Or are we doing the things that make us comfortable? And here's a real question that the prophet is now asking you and me living so many thousand years later. What does it mean to live by faith? That's the real question of the text. Because this woman, upon request, takes what she has to live on and hands it over to the prophet. And then she finds out that the jar of meal will not be spent, and the jug of oil is not empty. And she finds out that indeed there is a prophet in the house. Amen. And indeed there's a prophet in Israel. And indeed this prophet really is a man of God. She doesn't know that before she does her action. It is only through her action that she gets to know it. Now, we are called to walk by faith and not by sight.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
And that's what the text is saying. You have to believe it before you could see it. That's what the text is saying. She had to believe the word of the prophet. And then she saw the action of God. And that's what the text is saying. You know how we like to cut it? Seeing is believing. If I see it, I go believe it. To believe it, you first have to see it. You first have to believe in your mind and in your heart the truth that God has revealed, and then you start to see, and it becomes plain and obvious, and more obvious than reality itself. And this is why the prophet Elijah is such a great prophet. And this is why John the Baptist is cast in his shadow. This is why we read him, because this is one of the great teachers of faith that we have. And as we enter into this time, as we look again at what he is saying, as we hear again his word, we have to believe it before we see it. And that means that you have to be listening to God to be able to live as a person of God. Amen. That's what Elijah did. He was listening. And in his listening, he was obedient. And in his obedience, God stood by his side and protected him and provided for him in every one of his needs. You know, we want to have it our own way, but we can't have it both ways. We could either have it his way or our way. And his way is always the better way. It might be a harder way. It will stretch us in every direction. But if we choose to believe it, we actually will see it. Amen.
Amen.